big money power, accidents don't just happen, and coincidence is only an excuse for the guilty. Welcome to the Conspiracy Chronicles.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We must not fail to comprehend its grave implications.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations.
There has been an attempt, as perhaps you know now, on the life of President Kennedy. He was wounded in an automobile driving from Dallas Airport into downtown Dallas. The flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
Senator Robert Francis Kennedy died at 1:44 a.m. today, June 6, 1968.
An incident that took place less than 15 minutes ago at the Washington Hilton Hotel when shots were fired at President Reagan.
A second bomb has been found inside that federal building in Oklahoma City.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
That's the southern tower you're talking about.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
And now, here are your conspiracy detectives, Joe Joseph and Tim Watts.
Ah, yes, folks, another edition of Conspiracy Chronicles here at Freedomlink Radio. I'm Joe Joseph, along with Tim Watts. And boy, Tim, last week we really had a heck of a portrayal of the power that the Federal Reserve wields. I thought it was an excellent showcase. And folks, you can find this on our YouTube channel, the Freedomlink Radio. We just put that up today. So if you missed last week's show on the Federal Reserve, then by all means check it out, because tonight we're going to get into the next step in the progression, aren't we, buddy?
Because that's exactly what the Federal Reserve was, Joe. It was, probably the first big step, towards their goal for the New World Order. I mean, once they got control, the Rothschilds, they needed control of America. There was a lot here that they wanted, and it is evidenced by the fact that we don't have the New World Order, in totality yet. It's because of us. We're the last cog to bring in. They somehow need to get control over the United States, this country. We've got guns. We've got our Second Amendment. We can protect ourselves. That's our entire government, our entire country was set up on the fact that the people are able to defend themselves from a tyrannical government. And that's the only thing that really stands between us and a new world order right now. So for the Rothschilds and the financial powers that be, the Kuhn Loebs, the Rockefellers, the Warburgs, people that met at Jekyll Island that we talked about back in the meeting they had in 1910. These people, they've had this plan for so long, and they've been working meticulously at it. And it's failed a few times. I mean, people have to realize that. It actually failed in World War I somewhat. I mean, the League of Nations was meant to usher us into somewhat of a new world order, and we didn't ratify the Treaty of Versailles, and that was that. And they try again in World War II, and they're trying again now. And I think I kind of missed part of the point that I wanted to get to there. But the Federal Reserve was essentially the big foundation block that was placed into the United States in order to get the United States to the New World Order. That was right. Essentially.
What was it? Well, I say, what was it that Rothschild said about money?
I was just going there, buddy. He didn't care about who made the laws. See, you read my mind. He didn't care about who made the laws. This is Mayor Amschel Rothschild. He was he's the.
Do you have a good British voice to do that in?
Excuse me?
Do you have a good British voice to do that in?
Good British voice to do that in. Yeah, well. Anyway, he is, he didn't care quite who, made the rules. It was who ran the printing presses of the money, the currency. That's who has the power. So that's essentially what they did here in America. They just take over the power of the printing press. So that's why last week's show was such a huge thing. And again, please look for it on Joe's website on the Freedomlink. And check it out because it explains everything about the Federal Reserve. And it is such an important step towards the New World Order, or at least dragging the United States and all of us along with them into this New World Order, run not by people that we elect, but by the rich, the ultra rich, the mega rich, the actual vermin that somehow float to the top. What is that? Does shit float to the top, Joe?
I think that's what the saying is, man. Absolutely. But I mean, you're right. You control the finances. I mean, could you imagine what would happen if the Treaty of Versailles was actually, we signed it and the Senate voted for it and we had to adhere to it. Just, especially like if you think about me, I'm 36 years old. What we're going through today might have been going on in the 60s. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's how far advanced it would have been if that got ratified.
Oh, I think it would have probably happened in the 50s or something like that if they ratified all that, well, I'm trying to think of one that was supposed to be ratified. But nevertheless, yeah, you're right. It would have been a totally different world right now. That one thing, if the Treaty of Versailles was ratified and the United States jumped in that League of Nations, and who knows where we'd be today.
No, absolutely.
And of course, it spilled over to their United Nations.
Yeah. And we see how things have progressed from there. I mean, look, when you look at what happened with the United Nations and the fact that we got into it, look soon after what happened. And I'll just give you a brief timeline before we get into the New World Order and the next logical step in the chain. But 1950, we enter into a police action that was, of course, UN-backed, and that was the Korean conflict. That still goes on today. A lot of people don't realize, but we are technically still involved in that conflict. It still has not ceased. There's a ceasefire, but there was never an actual end to that conflict. And wouldn't you know it, today, Barry was out at the DMZ, the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, just having himself a little tour. Hey, what up, fellas? How's it going, baby? Woo! How you guys like it out here? Yeah, 35,000 active duty military consistently monitor that border. They maintain watch on that border. And for what? That's the question. It's not our place. But of course, if you look at the New World Order, you can understand exactly why that happens. So, you got the Korean conflict. And then very soon after that, we go in, Kennedy sends in, teachers, quote unquote, to go in and help train the Vietnamese. And soon after that, it's ramped up, especially after Kennedy's assassinated and Johnson takes over. Well, that's when the Vietnam conflict really kicks into high gear. And we could do an entire conspiracy show just on Johnson alone. Oh, holy crap. What a dirtbag.
Yeah, we probably should with that guy. I mean, anybody had their sister killed, for crying out loud.
I mean, that's huge, man. So anyway, then you get into that, and then we got, Tricky Dick, and the Vietnam conflict comes to an end. And, then we get involved in the Middle East and everything else. And people, you all know the history and how things have progressed. And the whole idea, of course, is to take world control. As a matter of fact, I heard there was a YouTube clip of General Wesley Clark on a Democracy Now! Interview, and this was from a couple of years back. But he was talking about how the Bush administration, right after 9/11, members of the Department of Defense had told him, well, they have a plan to go invade 7 countries in the next 5 years. And we're there in like 507 of them. It's unbelievable, folks. Well, sit tight. We're just getting started, so buckle in. We'll be back in 3 minutes. You're listening to the Conspiracy Chronicles on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Folks, don't forget the email address for the show is thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. That's thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. I'd like to give a big shout out to my buddy Ken, the Information Nation, whose show immediately follows the Conspiracy Chronicles. And thanks, Ken, for shooting me that file.
Ken is a good man.
He is, man, and I'm technically challenged, or somebody at Chat Tango is really having their way with me right now. So, we were talking about the NWO, and gosh, I mean, the whole progression of wars, they control the money stream. This has been a gradual thing, and it's something that I refer to, and many people refer to, as boiling frog syndrome. And people ask, why is it that people aren't pissed? But if you look at history, you see they've implemented this stuff over years and years and years, and they've tried and they've failed, and they tried and they succeeded, and they've tried and they failed, and
take a second though and tell for the people in the audience that do not understand the boiling frog syndrome, Joe. I mean, because then you'll get it. I mean, a lot of you get it, but some of them don't.
Well, no, you're right. You're right. So boiling frog syndrome is simply this. What happens when you put a frog in a pot of water and you slowly ratchet up the temperature on it? Well, it doesn't know that it's getting that much hotter because it's used to it. It gets used to that temperature change as it gets hotter. Well, pretty soon the water's boiling. And it had absolutely no idea. And boom,
and
dead,
at that
gone.
point, it's too late. It's too late for the frog to get out of the water. Now you throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, and that frog jumps his ass out of there right away. So, that's the difference, folks. They're ratcheting it up on us slowly right now. And so a lot of people, I don't know if they just don't recognize it or a lot of people deny it. I think it's a little bit of both, Joe.
Think about it. Think about this, Tim.
People don't recognize it.
Well, think about the past generations, right? How crappy do you feel when you haven't done your due diligence, and as a result of all of the shenanigans that the powers that be have brought upon us, look at where we are now. There has to be a measure of guilt. I mean, to anybody that gives a crap about future generations and their posterity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard pill to swallow that all of a sudden, holy crap, was I asleep? What the hell? All of a sudden, you come to your senses and you're just like overwhelmed with just how far things have progressed. So, I mean, I understand the mentality behind a lot of the reasons why people don't want to face reality or face the truth or see things for what it is. I also understand that the media controls things so much to the point that, I mean, they control the talking points. They control the propaganda that goes out. And as a result, you've got a mass. The masses are clearly misinformed and uninformed because the stuff that they're being told on the news is just absolute trash. I mean, that's it. I mean, they don't get me wrong. They do show snippet. It's kind of like this, and I learned this in my spiritual journey, and it was explained to me like this: deception wouldn't be deception if it's not believable. So they have to weave in a lot of it is true. Like what they show you in the mainstream media is true, but they'll deviate things just a little bit to the left or to the right, get you right off that road, and that's all it takes. And then after that, you've gone so far off course that you have no idea what's going on. And, the same thing, and that's what I learned when trying to understand spirituality, is that's how, that's how the devil works. Well, who the hell controls these butt pirates? It's the freaking, it's evil. That's what it is. It's evil. It's greed. It's a want of power and control. And if you look at history, just look at history and see how many, by percentage, and I'm sure you guys can go ahead and take a look, and look back through history at all the civilizations and look at all of the world of the governments of the world from the start, and ask yourself, what percentage of governments were tyrannies or oppressive dictatorships, and what percentage of them were, say, like a libertarian based or democratic based, something like that. You don't have it's so skewed or so heavy on the tyranny and on the despotism that it just blows your mind. It's like the human nature has us kind of migrating over to the tyranny side 9 times out of 10, probably even more than that.
Although he said we were the great experiment, We were the great experiment of, democracy and a new type of republic.
But I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is this blueprint that the NWO is following is not new. This has been going on since the beginning of time itself. This is one of the original plays in the playbook. And all they're doing is implementing things on a very slow and methodical basis. Even if it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, they're still making 1 step forward. They're still going back. So every time we give them a black eye, it feels good, but just understand that they're punching us in the gut twice as hard.
Yeah, everybody's always wanted to rule the world. That's, ever since, you're right, Joe, since time began. I mean, who's the last guy that had the big chunk of the pie? Alexander, probably? England, the sun never sat on the English Empire.
Well, I mean, Nebuchadnezzar. You can go back to Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar was the first world-dominating power. So, I mean, it's interesting that you look at Nebuchadnezzar, you could go to and that's the thing, too, the Bible in and of itself is also, it's a history book, too. You can go back and see these world-dominating powers in the Bible, and you can glean some very interesting information from it. Same with the Quran or the I Ching, all these books, they're all historical documents. And you can go back and see these world-dominating powers and what they did. And it's no different then as it is now. Just the times have changed, but it's all the same crap.
But now it's going to be a lot worse. I mean, a whole lot worse. I mean, it is going to be terrible now. If they pull it up.
Yeah, well, look at the tools they have at their fingertips.
Yeah, that's the deal. Hitler didn't have stuff like this, Genghis Khan, all these people back through history, they did not have the technology that they have now to be able to bomb you from 30,000 feet without you even see it coming, to listen to every one of your phone calls, to intercept every one of your texts, to check everything out that you're buying through your credit card. I mean, on and on. Your society or your life is controlled or watched far closer than most people have any idea or any inkling of.
Right? I mean, just think about this. The last census, they GPSed everybody's front door. Yep. Have you ever thought about why that is, or why that they all of a sudden want 30,000 drones up in the air? Yep. And at the same time, they've got the GPS coordinates to everybody's front door? Yeah, you know what? You speak out against the government, you do a broadcast like this, and guess what? Next thing you know, you got a Hellfire missile coming in through your front door.
this is how quick it is. It's like, they call up a number, they go, hello, say, we want you to check up Joe Joseph for us. They're like, okay. And next thing you know, they're on your house. It takes nothing.
The power is tremendous. But on the flip side, it's given us tremendous power to understand what it is that they're doing too. So when we get back, we're going to get a little bit into the NWO and all of the mysticism surrounding it. So sit tight, stay tuned.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Conspiracy Chronicles night with Joe Joseph and Tim Watson, talking tonight about the New World Order, where things have been going since, our last show last week when we talked about the Federal Reserve, and that was one of the foundation blocks, placed into America to get us to the New World Order, a world rule by the uber rich, the absolutely ultra filthy rich, the immoral rich, really, for all intents and purposes, Joe. I mean, these people have killed millions of people for years, and they're not opposed to killing more at this point either.
No, you're right, man. I mean, think about this. Where did it all start with the Bush family? I mean, gosh, you got Samuel Prescott Bush, and then you've got Prescott Bush, followed by...
there's certainly big players on the New World Order stage, that's for sure.
Huge. And I mean, we kind of talked about the Treaty of Versailles and World War I, and I think it would be probably best to kind of show a little bit about, or talk a little bit about World War II and how that too was a push to bring about a new world order, wasn't it?
Yeah, they tried again. The whole thing with the bonus army that they used. They had the soldiers that were due their bonus from World War I, and it was supposed to be paid. When were they saying? 20 years or something like that, and they wanted their money early. So they were protesting on Washington, and these rich people. The Remingtons, the DuPonts, the Rockefellers, you name it, the people at the very top, the very elite. I mean, these are the people that were living on Jekyll Island that we talked about last week. Jekyll Island didn't come into prominence until the late 1800s and really didn't last too much longer. I think 1942 was about the end of the Jekyll Island heyday. But I think very much because of this coup that was perpetuated upon the FDR administration, that once it was found out by the McCormick-Dickstein committee, I think, all these families, they separated like rats, immediately. And, that's kind of when that Jekyll Island thing came to an end. But again, back to the importance of Jekyll Island, that you've got just an enormous amount of wealth. What did we say last week, Joe? It was one-sixth of the world's wealth was coalesced right there, So these are the kind of families that were behind this coup on FDR, which fortunately, Smedley D. Butler, America's most unsung and unknown American hero. I mean, this guy should have a 100-foot tall granite statue of himself, out there on the plaza in Washington, D.C., shouldn't he, Joe? Smedley Butler.
I mean, you want to talk about a true American hero, and it's one that you virtually never hear about in history books or anything. I mean, people just don't talk about Smedley Butler. And it's a name, first of all, that you can't miss. And number two, what he did to kick the New World Order square in the couillons. I mean, it was fantastic. It was something that I wish more men of honor would stand up and do the right thing. And as we progress through time, you'll see that the men of honor out there are few and far between. And today they're few and far between. But it's finding the courage to do the right thing regardless of the outcome, regardless of the consequence to you or your personal well-being, because that's what it's all about. And I just put a video today up on my channel to just showcase to people that we're not alone. The people that speak out, the people that listen to this radio broadcast, the ones in the chat room, the ones that aren't in the chat room, the ones that listen to the archive, the ones that are doing things locally, we are all together. But they use tactics to make you feel isolated. They use fear tactics to make you feel scared, to come out in the open and to protest openly, a lot because of the technology, how it's advanced, the fact that they can fly a blimp 30,000 feet overhead. You hardly see it, but they can tell who you are through your biometric data. It's all there. This is all stuff the NWO has put in place over a period of time. And the biggest piece of advice that I could tell everybody, and I cannot show this enough, is that you're not alone, that there are many, many, many people that feel the same way that you do, but they feel isolated because of the tactics that the NWO employs.
Absolutely.
And the best place to hide is in the open.
Yep.
That's it. The best place to hide is in the open. The more you make yourself known, the harder it is for them to make you a target. Because if they do that, then their actions stand out like a sore thumb. It sticks out like a sore thumb. You know?
Yeah. And they've tried this more than once, and Smedley Darlington Butler, that's his official name. This guy stopped probably, the one attempt that might have gone through, to incorporate a fascist state in the United States at the same time it was being, put into play in Nazi Germany. So it wasn't just one country. It wasn't just Germany that this was supposed to happen to. This was supposed to happen in America as well. And this guy, Smedley Butler, got wind of it. Actually, they approached him. It wasn't that he got wind of it. Butler is one of those guys that when he got out of the service was totally disenfranchised after being, a lifer. A long-time general in the military, but when he got done, all he talked about was the fact that, he was just a mobster for, Dole Pineapple and the corporations and stuff like that. And so he wrote a book called War's a Racket. And then he would go around the country touring and talking about the fact that, war isn't what people think it is. And so all these rich people, for some reason, got the idea that, hey, here's a guy that's a little bit, bent on the United States. So they thought. I mean, they totally misplayed Butler. I mean, to the T. They totally misread this guy. So they thought, here's a guy that we can pull in, and we can get this guy to energize this 500,000 man or bonus army that was protesting in Washington D.C. and we can get him to lead these people against the government, against the United States. And so Butler, being the sly fox that he went along with the plot just long enough to where he could try to figure out who was behind it. And he realized it was the very, very, very ultra wealthy rich in this country. And, and if you don't believe that, folks, go take a look. And I know, and as Joe said earlier, they're not telling you that in history. And there's a good reason, because Winston Churchill says the victor always writes the history. And so they're not going to tell you about this. You got to go find it. But this guy was quite a legendary figure. And he broke up this whole thing. The McCormick-Dickstein Committee, they met, and they said it happened. They said absolutely every bit of it happened, but yet they let the rich go.
And why is that? Imagine that. Look at today. Look at today when you have Corzine and this MF Global thing. Same thing happens where the emails come out showing that he ordered the transfer of customer funds to J.P. Morgan. And wouldn't you know that he's just like, it's okay, buddy. No problem. It's just $200 million. Whatever. I mean, to them, it must be pennies.
Yeah, that's chump change.
I mean, really, it's crazy. There was a stat that just came out that says the top 5 banks control over 50% of the world's GDP.
Yeah, I saw.
Oh, jeez. And we allow this to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, we allow this to happen. Why is it that we, the people, aren't telling our non-representing representatives? And that's really what they are. They're controlled. I know they're bought by the special interests, but we need to really turn the screws on them and say, look, man, Sherman Antitrust Act, why aren't we utilizing that more? How come we're not holding these or breaking these big banks up? How come we allowed this to happen? And we sat by. You know why? Because at the get-go, at the onset, it really didn't affect us too much. And we really didn't know the far-reaching effects as of yet. But now we do. Now we do. And there's a very limited window of time with which to combat this, or it's going to be a tremendous hole to dig out of. Folks, don't go away. The last segment of hour number 1 is coming up. Man, this show's flying by. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio's Conspiracy Chronicles on the Orion Talk Radio Network.
And after 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order. And instead, it looks like we got a lot of disorder. And we still, and after 9/11, we've been more sensitive to the
Yeah, oh boy, I tell you what. Good old Slick Willie. Yeah, we do have a lot of disorder. It's amazing how this New World Order is bringing about nothing but disorder and crap. And really, you got to think, Tim, that's kind of the plan. You know,
Yeah.
It kind of goes to divide and conquer. You know, you divide, you conquer. And the world right now is very divided. If you look, there's a lot of animosity towards the United States, and rightfully so, based on our very forward foreign policy. I mean,
that preemptive warfare is really working out for us, isn't it?
Oh man, I just tell you what, I really didn't think much of it when Bush implemented the Bush Doctrine. You know, and that was strike before before being striked or being struck, and that is at the very heart of today's foreign policy, is that Bush Doctrine, which was, according to us at the time, a good idea. Oh, well, we don't want the terrorists to hit us again, so we're going to get them before they can get us.
And that's at a point where you actually suspect that another country is about to launch an attack on you. And that's what that whole theme was about then. Okay, you hit them first, but now you look at what's happened since 9/11, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya. And really, those 3 countries were about to hit us? Really? Really? Yeah, good gosh.
Well, that's just it, man. I mean, so just let's take a look at this now from a standpoint of today. You know, we went to World War II, and we could see how they tried to do it. They definitely took a major step forward with the United Nations. And the United Nations, need I say more when we talk about the latest congressional hearings with Leon Panetta, who said, we don't need to go to Congress for the legal authority to go to war. We get it from the United Nations. I mean, really? Yeah. So basically what he's saying is, to hell with the Constitution, which is a sovereign U.S. document. We're going to go to the world, and we'll just get the justification from them, which is just a damning indication of where the mindset of the leadership is.
Who would the world be, Joe?
Well, that's just it. It's obviously not Senegal, you know, or Sudan. It's not that. But who is the world? Well, the world is a very, very close-knit, lovely little elitist cabal who put their little puppets in power, whether it be Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General. Come on. You know, Kofi Annan, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're just people, they're players, man. You know, they're player, baby. That's how they roll. As long as they keep the cash flow. That's right. Keep the cash flow coming to me, baby. You know, same with the usurper in chief. This is a guy, now think about this, just for a second, because this has not gained any traction whatsoever. But you have an individual in the presidency of the United States that cannot verify his citizenship, to the point where E-Verify, the system set up to verify your citizenship like that in a snap, the president can't even pass an E-Verify check. So where's the outrage there? I mean, people should be freaking just absolutely. I'm fuming. I mean, I'm like foaming at the mouth. I look like a freaking rabid dog when I talk about that, because it just shows you how blatant things are. Just how, and they do so with absolutely no fear of any consequence at all.
But they're devious bastards, Joe. And the last show I mentioned that I, honest to God, think, after putting a lot of thought into this, that whole birth certificate thing has been one smokescreen to get us looking at something else when we should, be paying attention to, because we've already proved it. I mean, enough proof has come out to challenge it. But what has happened? Absolutely nothing. Other than we've wasted a lot of time on something that they're not going to give into. I mean, they're just flat out not going to give into that. I mean, we could produce a zillion documents, and I think they'll say, yeah, see where that gets you,
But shame on us, man. And not when I say shame on us, I don't mean shame on us, you and me, or the people listening to this broadcast. I don't mean that at all. What I'm saying is shame on us as a people, because these little things, and believe me, faking your citizenship to gain the office of the president is not little at all. But when you let these things go, you set precedent. And that is how this country is ruled right now, is through precedent, not through the rule of law, through precedent. If you look at our judicial system, they don't give a crap about the Constitution or what it says. And let me say this too, and you've heard me say this before. The Constitution has a Bill of Rights. Well, the Bill of Rights don't come from the piece of paper that it's printed on. Our rights don't come from the Constitution. The Constitution reminds the government what our rights are. It doesn't remind us. Those rights, that's something that no piece of paper or legislation can take away. And that's something that people don't understand, is that our rights cannot be legislated away. They can't be. So the rule of law, which is the centerpiece of that, is the Constitution in the United States. How many times have we seen it be usurped over the years? Countless times. And we put up with it. And the Declaration of Independence was very clear about what we do when a government is out of control, when it no longer has the interests of the people.
Yep.
And it becomes despotic, and that's what we have. I mean, I know it doesn't affect a lot of people on a personal level, but more and more it is. Just look at what our foreign policy has done to the price of gasoline. And it's not only foreign policy, it's monetary policy. Don't forget, we've had trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in bailouts. Now all of a sudden, that money is being put back into the system again. All this money that went to bail out banks, now this money's starting to be circulated through the system, and we're starting to feel the bite of inflation because of that, coupled with our foreign policy. And then the absolute atrocity, the atrocious regulatory body that doesn't even look into the crimes that are committed on Wall Street. And as a result, you've got rampant speculation when there's absolutely no shortage. You've got food prices going through the roof because of speculation, not because of shortage. And here we are now. And we've got we're at this bottom of this deep pit, and we have to climb out. And we've got like a shoestring to get ourselves out with,
A short shoestring.
This is just, it's awful, man. And you hate to say this time and time again, but where the hell is the outrage? At what point in time are people going to say, holy crap? And I've always said that people still have too much to lose. Well, I'm here to tell you this. it ain't going to be too much longer if things go the way they are before people have nothing to lose. And when people have nothing to lose, it's going to be too late. Because when you start to have people starving and wondering, how am I going to feed my child today? They will stop at nothing to get food for their child. Stop at nothing. And if you don't think that the United States can digress or can regress into a nation like that, don't think it won't. Don't think it won't. It absolutely could. And it's actually part of their grand plan. If you look at America 2050, America2050.org, and we talked about this, about Agenda 21, about these mega regions, doing away with the states and instituting 11 mega regions. It's almost a Soylent Green type of scenario, man, where you have these mega regions and everybody's kind of thrown in there and the rest of the country's rewilded, and then it's absolute crap. The living conditions, everything. You're made a slave, a pauper. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's just awful, and they're progressing at a rapid pace now.
Yeah. And they've taken so many different steps. Last week we talked about the Federal Reserve, and another one we'll have to talk about coming up. Actually, we probably should have talked about that today before, but we can touch on it now, and that's, the North American Union, because, first they got that European Union, which they really, really, really wanted really bad. Not working out too good right now, but, and then they've, been working for the North American Union, which for all intents and purposes, they've kind of got. I mean, Vicente Fox and Paul Martin.
Oh, it's there.
Fox,
it's there.
Mexico, Martin from Canada, and then George W. Bush, they signed that thing. It was already in the bag. But you know what? I've been following that. There's a lot of stuff that's happened on that North American Union front just in the last few years that nobody's paying attention to. So it's being solidified.
Yep. Hour number 1 is done. Hour number 2 is on the way, folks. We'll be right back. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio's Conspiracy Chronicles on the Orion Talk Radio Network.
Going to war with Iraq? Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. So I said, well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda? He said, no. He says, there's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Isn't that interesting, folks? Joe Joseph here along with Tim Watts. It's hour number 2 of Freedomlink Radio's Conspiracy Chronicles. And that was General Wesley Clark in a Democracy Now! Interview. And I'll tell you what, man, Tim, there isn't many other thing, or when you talk about damning evidence,
yeah,
and we have the luxury of being able to look back from when he gave that interview to now, and I mean, look at it. History's shown he's spot on. He wasn't speaking out of his tuchus.
Yep. Now, if we had a real media in this country, a media that has some real balls and had a real spine, they'd play this on the nightly news. But they're gutless. Every one of them's a wimp, and they're complicit, and they're accessories in this crime because they're aware of this audio. They know about it. They know about it just as well as we do. And you'd think they'd be able to put 2 and 2 together and go, hey, everything he said way back in 2001, it's all coming true. And, folks, this is what you got to get pissed off about. It's like Howard Beale said, you've got to get mad. I can't tell you what to do, but you've got to get mad first, for crying out loud. You've got to get pissed off. Otherwise, we're getting our jocks handed to us, and you're not going to like the world that your kids grow up in. I mean, if you don't give a crap, a rat's ass about, the world you're growing up in, think about your kids. Think about your nephew or your niece or somebody that it won't even be close to the world that we live in now. And it will be the worst oppressive state. It will be far, far, far worse than Hitler could have ever conceived of, simply because of the technology at their disposal today. 30,000 drones in the air, cameras that can recognize you going through intersections, biometric sensors that, let's just say, Joe, you were born triplets, and you wanted to pull one over and see if you could get by the federal government going somewhere. And if they saw the three of you walking down the street, they would know by your biometrics which one is Joe Joseph. I mean, there are so many ways they can track us now, so many things they can do. It is not a pretty world that is coming, and they say it's because they want to protect us.
Right. I think one thing that they really didn't take into account for, and I think this has been one of the reasons why it's kind of taken them so long to get a really good grasp on things, is first of all, when government gets big, it gets very, very inefficient. You get a lot of, I hate to say it, idiots in there that really, they can't do their job. You have things like, diversity. There's a thing, diversity. They get all caught up in the social, political correctness that's put out there. And because of that, you don't get the best people in positions, but you get people to fit statistics and numbers. And because of that, there's a lot of inefficiency in government. And because of that, it's kind of bought us some time. So, yeah, they have the tools, but as far from a manpower perspective, they're kind of behind the eight ball, because everything's still political correctness. I mean, if they were really hell-bent on taking over the world in haste, they could do it in a heartbeat. They certainly got all the tools in place. It's just you've just got Gomer Pyle pretty much in a lot of places, or positions of authority that just they can't execute, or they just have problems with it. And so it's interesting to see the dysfunctionality also within that type of organization. But I want to bring everybody's attention to this News Focus link that I put in the chat room, and a certain part of it written by a certain someone, Tim Watts. And it's titled "The New World Order, a Benevolent Endeavor for Mankind or a Plan for World Domination." This is a very, very important piece I want everybody to digest. It says, most Americans have no clue about the nefarious steps that have been taken without our consent to move the most powerful nation on earth into the New World Order, a long-time goal of the most wealthy elite, including 3 generations of the Bush family. Make no mistake about it, this plan has been underway for some time. An excellent question to ask would be, if this is all an innocent and honest altruistic endeavor, then why don't they ask permission from the people by putting the matter to a vote? That's a good question, Tim. Why wouldn't they put it to a vote?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, if they use their electronic voting machines, then they're okay.
Yeah, of course. Why do this in secret against we the people? This is a collective usurpation of national governments against the will of the world populace. And to that point, it's absolutely true. If you laid this all out for the average Joe, and they didn't blow you off, which a lot of them do because it's just so hard to wrap your arms around, you would come to find that there aren't many people that are on board with this. But they just don't see it, they don't live it. A lot of humans are creatures, or we'll just take Americans. Creatures of habit. You get up for work, you go to work. You come home, have a couple beers, sit back, relax, watch your network television, go to bed, repeat. And that's what they do. I mean, it's just creatures of habit. On the weekend, let's party hardy, man. Woo! Sunday football. And that's it. And that's what we do. I mean, we're creatures of habit.
Which is really kind of a pathetic existence when you really get down to it, you know.
Just think about how shallow that is.
Yeah.
I mean,
we've become used to it. You know? Meanwhile, you know, the absolutely ultra-rich live in such an opulent an environment and a life that none of us can imagine. But yet, as Joe just described, we live in this mundane routine that we call life. As, you know, we kind of service their...
And are quite happy with it. Yeah, people are just tickled pink to be able to get that case of Budweiser on that Friday and go on your binge. You know, and that's just it. They've lost touch with what life is supposed to be, how fulfilling life could be if you unplug from the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so frustrating, you know? And I just can't. Once you're awake and you see things for what it is, I can't go back to that type of existence. I don't know about anybody else out there, but I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't plug back in to the Matrix. I can't.
Well,
you want
the existence that we were supposed to have.
What's that?
You want the existence that we were supposed to have.
Yeah, exactly right.
That we thought we had.
I mean, they did call this country the Great Experiment. And it truly was, because never before in the history of the world had so many different kinds of people come together to form a libertarian-based society. It was really something interesting. Well, folks, when we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the New World Order, read a little bit more from this fantastic piece by my partner in crime, Tim Watts. So don't go away. Conspiracy Chronicles.
What do you think the most important thing is for Barack Obama? Obviously, you're here to talk about the anniversary for U.S.-China diplomatic relations, but if you had to say this is going to be the country or the conflict or the place that will define the Obama administration, what would it be?
The president-elect is coming into office at a moment when there are upheavals in many parts of the world simultaneously. You have India, Pakistan, you have the jihadist movement. So he can't really say there is one problem that is the most important one. But he can give a new impetus to American foreign policy, partly because the reception of him is so extraordinary around the world. I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
And if you didn't recognize that voice, by golly, it's Dr. Henry Kissinger, war criminal Henry Kissinger, on the Conspiracy Chronicles with Joe Joseph and Tim Watts. And in that clip, he was talking about Obama creating a new world order. And really all it is a continuation from the last how many generations. You've got the H.W. Bush and through the Clinton administration, through W. Bush administration, and now through Obama. And it really doesn't matter, you know, who's riding the horse. I mean, if McCain would have made it, same thing would have happened. Exact same thing. Santorum gets...
Do you think the acceleration, Tim, do you think the acceleration would have been as fast with McCain as it would be with Obama?
Actually, I think, yeah. I think it would have been faster, sadly enough.
That's a lot of the argument. That's a lot of the argument that people say in hindsight is that, well, yeah, you know, if McCain was elected, then, you know, the Second Amendment wouldn't be under attack and things like that. No, it most certainly would be under attack. I mean, this is a guy that was a prisoner of war, allegedly. And I say that allegedly because no prisoner of war would be in favor of holding Americans indefinitely without due process.
Well, there are other stories out there where people say he got preferential treatment, so that there is that threat out there, Joe.
I mean, I'm not surprised. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Somebody who had been treated cruel and unusual You know, and that's the way you got to think of POW. I mean, look at the pictures of how the American POWs were treated in World War II. You know what I mean? The ones in Japan or even in Germany. I mean, they were starved to death. They were emaciated.
Yeah.
You would never in your life think that anybody that's been through that would do that to another person, especially if it's one of your own. Doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, what you got was, again, you know, you're given the choice of a shit sandwich or a shit sandwich. What are you going to eat? You know, and that's just it. Oh, right. So, I mean, that's it. And in this election, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to have Romney or you're going to have Obama.
Yeah.
And there's your two. There's your two. What are you going to pick? And to be quite honest with you, if given that choice, I would almost want Obama to get reelected only because people will not be lulled into a false sense of security with Romney because he's a smooth talker.
That's a good point. That's a good point. You know, that's an excellent point, Joe. Because otherwise people, well, it's exactly what just happened to us before. I mean, we came out of, you know, the tyrannical Bush-Cheney administration. Actually, I should call it the Cheney-Bush administration and call it properly. But nevertheless, we were promised hope and change. Well, you know, we're getting change. We ain't got no damn hope. But, you know, that's a good point, Joe. People would see, you know, a new president and think, okay, we're going to get change. We're finally going to get it. No, you're not going to get it, folks. These people are all vetted by the powers that be. And they all make their trip. Clinton, you know, when Clinton was elected, there was a time when he disappeared, you know, off on that trip to, you know, the powers that be to get the marching orders. And the same thing with Obama. You know, his message wasn't too bad when he was running, but once they realized he was going to win the nomination, off he went with Hillary, and those two were gone from the campaign trail for a while and said to have, you know, gone to meet with the powers that be. And when he came back, holy cow. I mean, the message changed. Suddenly he's giving speeches in Berlin about a new world order. And you're like, uh-oh, they got to him. So no matter who gets in, folks, no matter who it is, it's unless, of course, it was Joe Joseph.
That's right.
Yeah,
boy. Oh, boy, man. I'll tell you what, if ever I had the drive to be able to fight that battle, and I do, but I'm a realist, and I know what would happen if anything like that would ever come to pass, even locally, because I have been really, really, really struggling with the urge to run for sheriff. And it's just one of those things that, you know, I'd love to do it. It's just, where do you have the time? Because I'm not given, first of all, I would never give up doing this broadcast only because what a good outlet it is to just get this information out. And I mean, really, folks, absolutely. A lot of people say, oh, you know, you do the internet radio and everything else. Well, internet radio is the wave of the future. The terrestrial radio is a way of the past. Less and less people are plugging into terrestrial radio, and more people are plugging into internet radio because of the fact. Well, I mean, everything's internet and IP based now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, to do that, but I mean, I would love to run for sheriff. It's just that if you look at the way my community's broken down, good Lord, man, what a battle. What a battle. It would be awful. And this all stems from last summer. I was driving home from work and got stopped at a roadblock. And I live in the most rural of rural places, really do. I mean, it doesn't get much more rural than where I am. And I said, hey, boys, what's going on? Looking for terrorists out here in Timbuktu? What the heck? Oh, no, license and registration check. I said, ever hear of the Fourth Amendment or even the Fifth Amendment? And now, you know, I could tell I was talking to the wall with the trooper and the deputy that was there. So then I drove my butt right down to the courthouse, and I confronted the sheriff. And I asked him, I said, well, what about our constitutional rights? And straightforward. And I mean, the guy thinks he's doing his job. I don't care about the Constitution. I care about the laws of the state of North Carolina, baby. Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, think about it. A roadblock, what does that do? First of all, it impedes your Fourth Amendment right to illegal searches and seizures. And then your Fifth Amendment right because you're guilty and you have to prove your innocence. You have to prove the fact that you have your license and your registration and your insurance right there. Your Fifth Amendment right has just been violated.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it is.
I kind of think all of that stuff, Joe, is to get us ready for when they do the harsher road checks, when they're actually just stopping you because they want to stop you. I mean, this kind of sets it up and makes it seem like, okay, it's kind of one of those things that happens once in a while, because I got a feeling it's going to be happening a lot more often unless people get pissed off and start writing their representatives and get involved here.
Boiling frogs.
Because again, these people have failed a few times already. They failed in World War I. They failed in World War II. They haven't pulled it off. They're trying it again. You know, it started with 9/11, and they're just about there. But we got a lot of people that know what's going on, and it's up to you folks in the audience to stand up. Somebody has to help out. You've got to do something.
That's right. Back to this news focus piece. It goes on to say, some errantly say, this will be socialism, but it will be far from it. It will still be a continuation of crooked crony capitalism with all services privatized for profit. The wealthy and the corporations will be in total control, and that is clearly fascism. Tim, I mean, I just gave that frightening statistic. Top 5 banks control over 50% of world output, the world GDP. Five. Count them on one hand. It's unbelievable, folks. The amount of power that the New World Order actually wields, these elitists. Holy crap.
Central bankers.
Yeah, we'll be right back after these messages, folks. I cannot believe a half an hour has passed in hour number 2. Don't go away. We'll be...
News with Paula Middlehurst.
Well, there have been extraordinary scenes in Berlin tonight as thousands of people gathered to hear Barack Obama deliver key foreign policy speech on his current European tour. The Democratic presidential hopeful laid out his vision for America's place in a new world order, saying he was speaking as a proud citizen of the United States and a fellow citizen of the world. Well, Senator Obama's tackled America's place in the world at several points in his speech, acknowledging recent splits between the U.S. and the rest of the international community.
In Europe, the view that America is part of what has gone wrong in our world, rather than a force to help us make it right, has become all too common. Yes, there have been differences between America and Europe. No doubt there will be differences in the future. But the burdens of global citizenship continue to bind us together. A change of leadership in Washington will not lift this burden. In this new century, Americans and Europeans alike will be required to do more, not less. Partnership and cooperation among nations is not a choice. It is the only way, the one way, to protect our common security and advance our common humanity.
And that is a chilling speech, absolutely chilling, because, you know, that was not the Obama that we heard leading up to before he disappeared with Hillary and they went to visit with the powers that be, as the story goes. It's the Conspiracy Chronicles Sunday night with Joe Joseph and Tim Watson. We're talking about the New World Order, and that's just another one of those speeches by a U.S. dignitary where they're actually talking about the New World Order. They're not talking about a global alignment or anything. They always use the same term. It's the New World Order. It's not something that's made up. It is, you know, it is what it is. It is an entity that they're trying to further. They're trying to perpetuate upon this world. And that's what everything is about since 9/11. It's where we're going with the police state, the show that Joe and I did on that, and it's with the Federal Reserve. You know, they were the cog that was put into place in the United States to kind of get us there. But there's many factions working behind the scenes right now. You've got the Council on Foreign Relations right here in the United States, of which many of our major media are part of, and we've already read that on future broadcasts.
Of which Edward Mandel House actually created, who was integral in establishing the Federal Reserve.
Yep, absolutely.
Isn't it amazing how all this kind of ties together, Tim?
And the Rockefellers and J.P. Morgan are big in all three of these that we're about to talk about: the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, and the Bilderbergs. You know, and then so this is kind of the tier system here in the United States. And then, you know, overseas, you've got the Club of Rome, you've got the Illuminati. I mean, these are all the secret societies that Kennedy is talking about, you know, in that famous speech that he gave years ago when he talked about, you know, that America is against secret societies. You know, and the people that are against this, well, these are what they are. If you don't know anything about these folks, you really need to take a look and educate yourself, because they are these societies of absolutely ultra-rich people that belong to these, that are furthering this new world order agenda along. And again, it's not going to be a new world order where we get to vote anymore. I mean, forget crap now.
Let me add this in too, because this is an important point that I think everybody needs, and it's a good point to point out to people who are not awake or may feel hopeless. And that is simply this: the power that the elitist cabal wields, the power that the government wields, the power that your local law enforcement yields, all of that comes from you. But it's a perceived power. We perceive that they have power over us. We perceive that they have jurisdiction over our lives, but it's only because we give it to them. There's been some comments in the chat room that says, well, when are we going to arrest them? We have the power to arrest them. Don't think we don't. This government is made up of, or given the power by the people. It may not feel so much like that now because everything has been usurped. But I'm telling you, folks, all we have to do, the main thing you have to do, and the main message you have to get out in order for people to understand the power that they have, is we are not alone. We're not alone. You're not alone. Your buddy's not alone. Anybody listening to this broadcast and everybody out there that's concerned with the way this nation is going, you are not alone. And the NWO and all of their little cronies cannot take away certain rights that you're born with. I mean, these are birthrights. You can't take those away. We can only give them away. Yes, they can put you at the barrel of a gun. But at the end of the day, you do not have to consent. Yeah, well, the ultimate price may be your life. But it's all about, what are you willing to sacrifice for freedom, for liberty, and for your children? Just think about that. Think about what life is going to be like for the children now. I mean, there was just you know what? It's funny, Tim. There was just a piece, and this is Press TV, so it's, you know, it comes from Iran. And of course, it's in Iran's best interest to make sure the truth gets out, because if people understand that, then they know that, well, you know, Iran's really not the force behind all of this evil throughout the world. Are they perfect? No. But they're certainly not what the United States is making them out to be. And Max Kaiser was on there, and he was saying within 24 months we could see gasoline prices double. And it's simply because of speculation and inflation. Those two factors, not supply. Not supply. I mean, we're sitting, just so you know, the United States is sitting on reserves that could supply the world for 200 years.
I've got a buddy that works on the Alaskan oil fields. And he goes up there for 3 weeks at a time. He goes up and works 3 weeks, and then he comes back and he's here for 3 weeks in Minneapolis. And he says there are more capped oil wells in Alaska. He says you have no idea how much oil that this country is sitting on right now. And he says they actually just found another one, or was it somewhere around Wyoming or Montana? Did you hear about that one? He says it's the largest field that they found. You know, in America.
Right. It dwarfs the reserve in Saudi Arabia. It dwarfs that. I mean, it absolutely, we definitely have that. So basically, this is what I'm gleaning from it. But it speaks against New World Order thought, is that if you do that, right, say we go and we just suck the Middle East dry and everybody else dry of everything they've got. And then we come over, and now we have the power. So is it a nationalistic frame of thought, or what is it that they're trying to achieve by this? You know what I mean? And that's what kind of throws me for a loop, is if they're looking at it from a New World Order perspective, then is that what it is? Or is it something like a Western Order perspective? You know what I mean? That right there is one of those things that I'm often confused on, is what's the motive behind it? Because if anybody does any research into petroleum, you'll find that it's not fossil fuel. It is simply it's an abiotic resource that continually regenerates itself, you know? So, I mean, it's interesting. I have to say that I am it's such a complex issue, you know, the whole petroleum thing, but the economy's not. Controlling the resources of the world isn't. And if they have the United States in their hip pocket, then I can totally understand why. You know, you control the resources, you control the money, and you control the world. So I'm actually, I don't know, man. I mean, you can't see like China. I cannot understand or even fathom like a mainland invasion of the United States by China. I just think that we're too far advanced in weaponry and everything else for that to ever happen.
This is such an incredible distance, you know. You'd see them coming. Not unless, I mean, they're going to send, you know, a gazillion submarines our way.
But, I mean, not to mention the fact that you've got the nuclear threat, but even more so than that, and even more dangerous, is the scalar threat. You know, the weapons that you can't see. That's the stuff that's really scary. Folks, we're going into the last segment of this broadcast, so don't go away. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio's Conspiracy Chronicles. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to the Conspiracy Chronicles tonight. And don't forget, immediately following the Conspiracy Chronicles is our good buddy Ken and the Information Nation. So if you're tuning in, make sure you follow on over. If you're in the chat room, head on over to Ken's chat and tune into the Information Nation here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Joe Joseph and Tim Watts, we're wrapping up this Sunday evening broadcast, and I think it's kind of important, Tim, that we kind of talk about some of the major players involved in the this New World Order.
But, you know, there's been some that, you know, it's like that bad penny that we talk about all the time that just keep, you know, they hang around. You just can't get rid of them. And number one is Henry Kissinger. I mean,
God, that guy just won't die.
I know. I know.
It's like, son of a gun. Just die already. He's the chancellor of William and Mary University, too, folks. So if ever you want to, like, send him a piece of mail or something like that, go ahead, you know. Send him your love. And just go ahead.
No, I was going to say him and Cheney and Rockefeller, David Rockefeller. They're all in the same boat. You know, heaven don't want them, and hell don't want them either. You know.
Well,
so
Cheney will be in the hospital. He'll be in the hospital recovering. So if anybody wants to send him chocolates or flowers, by all means, go ahead and send it to him. I got a good story about that. You know, not to get too off topic, but a coworker of mine recently had some heart trouble. Now he's a little bit older. He's about 65 years old. But they had debated whether or not to give him bypass surgery or whether to just let him ride it out. And basically what was happening, he's short of breath, couldn't climb stairs, everything like that, you know. And as it turns out, he needed bypass surgery. But they were saying that he was too old to qualify for it.
60 now, what? How old? 65?
65. 65, and they were debating it. Meanwhile, this asshat Cheney at 71 gets a new heart. Are you kidding me? I mean, the man's got the freaking don't even get me started. It just goes to show you. It goes to show you that even with this BS Obamacare and everything else that's going on, I'm telling you, folks, don't fall for the BS. Don't fall for it. And don't put up with it. You know, when you got guys like, don't think that the Rockefeller is just some BS conspiracy theory. There's no theory to it. These people are openly quoted as wanting to take over the entire world. Everything that we say we don't make this stuff up. You know, this isn't historical fiction. This is real stuff. And they want to take over every aspect of your life and take your humanity away from you.
Yeah.
How scary is that?
You know, and it's like Kennedy said, you know, in his famous Secret Society speech, he says, "For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a secret system that is there behind the governments." And presidents for generations have often said that they knew that there is a secret power behind the scenes that controls everything. They've known about it since the days of, before FDR, I think Andrew Jackson. And even Reagan said that he knew that there was another power and control in his last term. He was dismayed to understand that, you know, he was not the total authority here in the United States.
It blows me away, Tim. It really blows me away.
Yeah, you know, and some of those other names that hang around for a while, you know, Brzezinski, Zbigniew Brzezinski, he's been like Kissinger, they've both been in
another guy that just won't die, man. He just won't go away.
They've all been in the CFR. They've all been in the Trilateral Commission. They've all been in the Council on, I mentioned Council on Foreign Relations, but also the Bilderberg. So those are the three, CFR, Trilateral, Bilderberg. And then, you know, like Queen Beatrix, she's been around for an awful long time. HW, that Bush family. And then, of course, you got your Rockefellers, your Rothschilds, and Kuhn-Loebs, and the J.P. Morgan interest is still very well represented. But there's no way we could do justice to this in 2 hours. Again, it's, you know, when Joe and I try to talk about 9/11, you just can't do it in 2 hours. The point is, there is a concerted effort to do away with nationalism, to do away with the United States of America as we know it, to form a one world government. And look at the way they've been handling things since 9/11. For crying out loud, they can't even handle America. Can you imagine, a bunch of punks like this running the world, Joe? Holy hell.
I don't even want to, they already do. First of all, they already do.
Yeah.
You know, they already run the world, whether it be through their puppets or directly. You know, again, top 5 banks, over 50% of the world GDP are controlled by the top 5 banks. 6 corporations, and at their head, 6 people control the entire mainstream media. We're not talking about a vast conspiracy. We're talking about a very tight-knit group of people that are out for world conquest. That's what this is. And they're doing it because of the boiling frog syndrome, because they're patient. They understand that it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They're cool with that. Everything's cool. And now we're seeing this is like their precipice, both for them and for us. Why? Yeah. Because we're waking up at an exponential pace, meaning the populace, and their plans are at the highest level that they've ever been. I mean, look at it. So, I mean, we're really all I can think of is, if you remember anybody that and I don't watch football anymore, but they used to have this little graphic where it was like dun 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 dun, and then the 2 helmets clash together, bam. And I mean, we're there. We're there. We're about to clash together. And I don't fear, first of all, I don't fear what's coming down the pipe. As a matter of fact, these are very exciting times. And people should focus on the positive and double your efforts in trying to get as many people awake to reality as you possibly can. Unplug them from the matrix while we still have the time and the resources to do so.
Because it's all working one place, you know, and you look, again, like we've been saying, since just this last November 2011, all the things that have come into play that have furthered the demise of the United States, which works in the favor of the New World Order, and that is the NDAA. You know, you've had HR 658 now that's going to put, 30,000 plus drones in the air. You've got the NDRP, which Joe and Angie just uncovered that we just talked about in the last week. I mean, you've got so many things that have actually just happened, literally, I think probably 6 significant things in 5 months' time, Joe. And each one of them furthers us a little more along. So it's time to start fighting, folks, and there's a couple of quotes that we used before, but I guess I'll throw it out real quick. But, Paul Warburg saying, we shall have one world government whether or not we like it. The only question is whether world government will be achieved by conquest or by consent. And he said that before the U.S. Senate. This is one of the original guys that was part of the Federal Reserve. And then, of course, the other one is the Rockefellers, where David Rockefeller actually admits, some even believe that we, the Rockefeller family, are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States. Characterizing my family and me as internationalists and conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, a one world order, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it, David Rockefeller.
I mean, there it is, right from the horse's mouth, man. So, I mean, do you need any more evidence than that? Do you need any more evidence as far as the breakneck speed that these elitists, that the New World Order is putting these policies into place? And again, here we are. The water's almost to boiling. We still have a chance to get out, but the window is closing rapidly. And you have to ask yourself, and you have to ask everybody around you, what will you do? How far will you go in order to preserve your humanity and your God-given rights? Remember, your rights can't be legislated away. You have to give them away. At the heart of this matter is personal responsibility. Each and every one of us has the responsibility to nurture freedom, to nurture liberty, and to protect it at all cost, even if it means paying the ultimate price. But it's stuff that we have to do. Liberty is not cheap. It doesn't come for free, and it goes against the grain of history. Man, Tim, this show flew by tonight, man. Unbelievable. It is. Well, it's unbelievable.
Do it in 2 hours. You just can't do it in 2 hours.
No, you can't. Folks, sit tight. Information Nation coming up next.